many people know this, but there are more advanced coaching techniques available than there ever have been before.
Have you ever stopped to think about what is actually the most challenging part when it comes to coaching skills? You need to know this, but the answer may not be what you think.
Now, the thing people find the most difficult by far in coaching is always in giving people feedback. Keep watching this video to get your free copy of our Ultimate Coaching Guide.
If you get feedback wrong, you'll quickly find just how awkward and unpleasant the experience can be for both you and the person you're coaching. Get it right and you'll be able to improve your team's performance faster and easier than 99% of managers and leaders out there.
In this episode, we're going to tell you the secret to giving feedback without offending or demotivating, so you can take advantage of executive level coaching skills. That's all covered later in this video.
We're going to cover how to give feedback to a new employee or team member, what you need to do if you find yourself putting that feedback conversation off when you know you need to have it with someone, and what employees really want from feedback.
Over the years, we have been responsible for thousands of employees, and we have trained hundreds of managers and leaders how to give effective feedback. We've mastered how to teach this, and we're really looking forward to sharing these coaching tips and techniques with you today.
If you want more tips and techniques on how to improve your communication and leadership skills, go visit our website at curiouscommunicator.com and keep updated with our latest videos by subscribing to Curious Communicator TV. Just click on the subscription button below this video.
Okay, so not many people know this, but there is a way of giving feedback to someone when they are doing a bad job without offending them and without demotivating them.
You may find yourself with a new team or a new employee, and even though you know they're not good enough, you keep putting that conversation off when you have to give them the feedback and tell them they're doing a bad job.
It can be extremely difficult to tell someone their performance is not good enough, particularly when no one has ever provided feedback to employees before. Now, the good news is that the majority of employees who work for you do actually want your feedback.
And surveys and studies back this up. A recent survey showed that 65% of employees said they actually prefer to have more feedback. We actually quite often find situations where employees have not received feedback for weeks or sometimes months or even years, and even the smallest amount of constructive feedback or negative feedback can often come as a big shock.
Even though it's right to tell people they're not doing a good enough job, it can also be risky and have a real negative consequence to them, to yourself, and even the entire team.
This disruption that's caused in any business can be huge for employers and organisations, and they want to avoid it at all costs because it costs a lot of money. It can be very distracting, and this is probably the number one reason why you get this continuous cycle of a lack of feedback in businesses and organisations. But there are unwanted side effects to this perceived safety of not giving feedback.
What we're going to look at now is a really good example of how giving feedback has to be done with the right balance. If you imagine every relationship you have with someone you know is represented by a scale, and that when there is no conflict between you, these scales are balanced. When giving feedback to employees, you are doing the equivalent of dropping a huge weight on one side of the scale, and this upsets the entire relationship.
When this happens, people then stop listening to the facts that you're presenting and start thinking about defending themselves and their actions, and they're going to come up with blame and excuses. And this quite often creates a tension between themselves and you, and this is very bad. If you find people responding like this, with the blame and excuses, then they're often not listening to what you're saying. This is because they're preoccupied by thinking about what they're going to say when you stop talking.
Any progress you were making has now been halted in its tracks. And as a coach, even if you get them to do whatever you are asking them to do, they will stop doing it at the first opportunity they get.
And it may also have the other side effect and consequence of breaking down the relationship between you and them over the long term. And this is something you absolutely want to avoid if you want to be successful in the long term with coaching.
Now, this feedback technique is simple and easy, and if you are like many of the managers and leaders who are out there already, being honest with their people, it means you are 50% of the way there. Tipping the scale with honesty is necessary because you have to be honest about how you believe they performed. The problem is, the longer it's been since they last heard the truth and had some feedback, the more negative that feedback is going to feel for them, and the more dramatically you're going to tip the scale.
When people haven't received feedback, or they've had little and not very often, they're going to feel like you've just dropped a bomb. Even if the feedback's not actually that bad, they're actually going to perceive it to be that way. Adding weight to the scale with the initial feedback is only the first step in the process.
So when you do this, you will really likely notice a change in the person's mood or behaviour. They may get incredibly angry and frustrated with what you've just told them. This is really easy to spot. It's a hot reaction.
Yeah, that's right. Or they could go very quiet on you. This is more difficult to spot, but it's really important that you take the time to observe this. This cold reaction, and what essentially is a withdrawal from the conversation, is very, very common. When you're giving feedback and you can feel that tension building in the relationship, you feel a change in the balance between you, you're going to look for that hot or cold reaction. This is your cue. When you spot it, this is your cue to move to step 2 in this process.
Yeah, now step 2 is balancing the scale again. There are a number of ways you can do this, but as a guideline, the more dramatic the reaction to the feedback you have given, the more time you need to spend balancing that scale back out again, by using positive feedbacks or observations that you notice from their performance.
And this may feel strange at first because you've probably never done it before, or even seen it done well, but that's okay. What's really important here is you take the time to plan and you make your planning strong prior to the conversation. Good planning is your secret weapon to help you hit the ground running.
A positive feedback doesn't mean using information falsely, and it doesn't mean making things up to make people feel better. In this situation, it simply means explaining the positive opinions you have about them are still true. In other words, you're going to say, I know about your good qualities, and this feedback about your behaviour hasn't changed my opinion of you. I still think you are a good person, hard-working, trying to do your best, etc. They need to know that you don't think they are a completely different person, just because you are giving them some negative feedback. Now remember, you know everything you know about them, but they don't. They don't understand what it is that you're feeling about them or what your thoughts are about them. So for them, it's going to feel like things between you have changed a lot.
That's right. A bit of reassurance here goes a very long way. Planning really is the best kept secret of most skilled executive coaches. Planning what you're going to say is the best way to give feedback. Once the scale has been balanced back out again, you can continue the conversation, but this time without shouting, screaming, or that frosty silence that people get you when they withdraw from the conversation. And that continues for weeks and months. It can be really disruptive in the coaching relationship between the coach and the coachee. So always make sure to observe for the hot or cold reaction, and when you get that, take the time to reassure the person. You know they care, you know they want to do a good job, and you know they worked hard. If you do those things, you can balance the scale back out, and they're going to be prepared to listen to what you're saying.
Now getting this right will enable you to do the things that no one thinks is possible. Skilled executive coaches are far more successful than mediocre coaches when it comes to giving feedback. They take the hassle and the drama out of situations that everyone else finds so hard to deal with. This leaves them free to focus on getting out in front of the pack and staying there. So next time you can sense a breakdown in the conversation you are having, have a think about how you can balance that scale back out again.
And that brings us on to step 3. Step 3 is discuss the consequences. You're going to look at the consequences to the organisation, the consequences to the team that the person works in, and the consequences to the individual themselves. It's really likely they haven't thought that far ahead and they didn't even realise what these consequences were. If they do this and you help elevate their opinion of the bigger picture, they're going to make far better decisions.
But finally, that brings us on to step 4, giving new instructions. Coach them on better ways to complete the task by sharing your experience in a way that they can understand. Remember, they don't have the experience that you do in the relevant task, so keep it simple and keep it concise. Them failing doesn't make you a failure as a coach. If you're not sure about how the person has responded to your attempt to balance the scale back out, then a top tip would be to ask someone they work with and get on with. If you take the time to explain that you want to help the colleague improve, but you're not sure how they have taken your feedback, a third party can nearly always get the information you need when you cannot. And don't be offended if they tell the person something they didn't tell you. It takes a lot of courage to speak your mind, and it's a skill that needs to be developed. So make sure you respect where the person is on their journey.
That's right. The most important part here is that you understand how the person is feeling about your feedback. Because if you get that accurate information, you can then adjust your feedback as is needed.
Okay, so that's it for this executive coaching technique. We hope this video has helped you understand these advanced coaching skills.
If you've learned some cool stuff on today's video, make sure you subscribe to our channel right now. Just click on the subscription button below this video.
Also, if you want more tips to help you improve your leadership and communication skills, head over to curiouscommunicator.com and sign up to the newsletter. You'll receive exclusive tips and techniques that we do not share anywhere else.
And don't forget to get your copy of our Ultimate Coaching Guide sent directly to your email address. Just click on the link in the description box below. It's full of valuable advice and is free.
So now it's your turn. Which of today's techniques have been most useful to you? Will it be using the balance the scale technique to give feedback? Or maybe it's to seek information from a third party to help you make better coaching decisions? Either way, let us know by leaving a comment below right now.